Penguin Random House Audio presents Women of War, the Italian assassins, spies, and couriers who fought the Nazis, by Suzanne Cope. Read for you by Saskia Maarleveld. For Patra, who never stopped fighting. Introduction. There are ghosts everywhere. Along Via Cavour in Rome, I imagine watching Carla throw her father's clothes from an open window 4 stories above, suit pants and collared shirts drifting down to the young Italian soldiers in uniform who need an outfit to blend in among their civilian peers. Now I see souvenir shops and a restaurant selling Chinese-Italian food. Perhaps a half-mile away, Cinema Barberini is showing the latest blockbuster, while tourists in windbreakers and sneakers take selfies in front of the Triton fountain. An arc of water from the sea god's conch spraying into the air, refracting the bright sun into rainbows. I stop where Carla stood and watched with horror as her comrade raced down the hill just beyond, toward where the Nazi transport trucks would have parked to ferry the soldiers to and from their barracks. As I wander the eternal city, tracing the steps of Carla Caponi, I find myself caught up in a parade of students, its leader holding a metal stick with a purple pom-pom attached to the top. It bounces as she treads the cobblestones. We are all walking toward the Spanish Steps, and the orange of sunset turns violet with twilight as we near. The students dissipate at the top of the steps, above the piazza that gave them their names centuries before, to take pictures of a now glowing Rome below. But I am thinking of the night during the occupation when Carla and 2 others crept up these same stairs on a mission for the resistance. To be caught would have meant arrest or worse. I look to the shadows that would have hidden them from the fascist night watchmen wandering the city. Couples now pose and groups of friends laugh, leaning against the waist-height wall at the ridge of Venetian Hill, which Carla and her comrades might have crawled beneath as they snuck from the steps to the Villa Medici. I similarly reanimate the past in Florence, on the dusty streets around the university where Teresa Mattei studied philosophy, the windows of the palazzos built up close against the sidewalks, shut tight in the heat of a summer afternoon. Or along the mountain paths outside of the small city of Reggio Emilia, where dedicated historians have sought to help others understand the routes walked by staffette, a term that translates to couriers, when in reality these operatives did so much more than carry messages. Anita Malavasi walked here in the forests that fill the valleys beyond the cities, where so many escaped to save their lives. Still, violence found them here. For some, even death. On a perfect spring day, I studied the first crocuses of the season emerging from the verdant green around me, and heard the bells from Castelnuovo nei Monti ring out at noon as I walked these same paths, headed steeply uphill, where Anita might have stolen moments to stop and wonder at the beauty around her. But a stick cracking or a rustling of leaves would bring her back to the fear of the unknown. Was today the day she encountered a German hiding among the trees? In Turin, I seek to reconcile the bombed-out street where Bianca Guidetti Sera lived with modern-day strade filled with jovial groups speaking multiple languages, waiting in a line that wraps around the block for an animation exhibition at a cinema museum. In a country with such fidelity to blending the past with the present, it is not often easy to tell which buildings were rebuilt since the war, where the old ends and the new begins. Were the roads in the same place? In the Alps, where Bianca traveled with messages or deliveries, they must be. The towns were built right up to their edges, with little room between where the houses end and the mountains begin. They may be paved now, for the most part, but they are still often too narrow for 2 modern cars to pass comfortably. In many places, the way that Italy has preserved its past helps these ghosts come alive. I do not believe we need to be constantly reminded of suffering and war. But I followed these paths to help tell a story almost unknown to English-speaking audiences, to illuminate a past that sometimes feels all too resonant. Over the years that I researched and wrote this book, neo-fascist politicians were elected around Europe and in the United States. Division and hate of Jewish people still, but also of others with different religions or skin colors or heritages who are considered foreigners, unwelcome in their own homes, native or adopted, have intensified around the world. It is my hope that we can learn from the women in these pages, see the story of World War II through new eyes. By centering the experience not on the soldiers, many of whom were compelled to fight by their governments, but on those who chose to enter the war as members of the resistance, we learn that for Carla, Teresa, Anita, and Bianca, the decision to do nothing was to side with the enemy. To that end, this is not an exhaustive history of World War II, of the Nazi occupation of Italy, or of the experiences of Italians under fascism. There are already many excellent tomes on these topics. Rather, this is the story of 4 women within the larger context of their time. Their individual and collective experiences drive this narrative, though I have sought to bolster the larger historical context of these experiences by including facts that we know now. In Italy, and to a varying extent globally, news moved slowly and was incomplete during the war, on the battlefield and in occupied and attacked areas. And there was much that wasn't known until well afterward. The broader stories of war and the historical context provided here are generally more detailed and include more complete information than these women could have had access to at the time. I also strive to give a sense of what they did know through Radio London and the clandestine press. I'm allowing their experiences to lead this narrative, to provide a counterpoint to the many accounts of this time period from other points of view. I am honored to be able to amplify the stories of these 4 women and numerous others who were prepared to give their lives for a new future that many could only begin to dream of when the first bombs fell on their imperfect but beloved country. Mussolini's fascist regime had done its job. An entire generation of young people were brought up largely ignorant of the world beyond their borders. Most, under fear of arrest or violence, had parents who were too scared to share what life was like before Il Duce, or consider what possibilities, for women in particular, other countries and cultures could provide. These 4 women, and so many other young Italians, could see a future worth fighting for. And hundreds of thousands of them made the decision to fight against both the Nazi occupiers and their own fascist countrymen. For themselves, yes, but more so for those who would come after them. Through these travels, and by listening to and reading many testimonies, I have come to know these women and the terror under Nazi occupation and fascist oppression, and have sought to recreate their lives based entirely on the details they left behind. And they left behind a lot. 2 of the women wrote about their lives in the resistance through memoirs. All of them gave multiple and detailed testimonies and interviews, and most had fellow partisans, as the resistance members were known, who also provided testimony about their time together. These stories do represent the breadth of the contributions of the many women and men who fought for their freedom during this period. But at the same time, I recognize that there are as many unique tales of bravery and persistence as there are women of the resistance. I do not claim to fully represent the experiences of women during this time. There are many historians and scholars who came before me who also sought to detail as much as they could from this period, starting in the years soon after the war, to help preserve memories that time might soften. Italy also keeps a number of valuable archives, physical and online, of the resistance, which help to recreate this history. There are dedicated and knowledgeable librarians who helped me track down rare books and documents, and other journalists and archivists who worked hard to preserve the stories of these women and men in the years before they died. Their work was invaluable to my research. There are also small museums, plaques, and places of interest that note where important moments occurred, or hold collections of items and offer further historical details, allowing me to be assured my footsteps matched those I was following. And yet, there are moments where the testimonies conflict with other accounts, sometimes even with accounts given by the same person, or with the historical record. Further, most of the sources I am working with are in Italian. Most translations are my own, with occasional help, confirmation, or clarification from native speakers. I have strived to note any conflicts or uncertainties in the endnotes, as well as cite my sources. But by and large, every scene or word of dialogue is directly taken from, or was implied in the words of, the people who were there, as are details of the women's emotional responses. There are moments when the timing of an action is unclear, and I placed those within the narrative where I believed, from my research, they made the most sense. Please see the note on sources for more.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?